Guys, we've got a Volkswagen Bora here, very much the same as the Polos and Golfs. Common fault that happens with the car: the door doesn't open from inside or out. You've tried all the obvious things. You can see that that's moving but not wanting to fully open. You've tried all the various pulling both handles at the same time. You've tried opening it via the central locking. You've checked your fuses. You've tried via live data to actuate and open the door, and everything has failed, leading to you having to more or less break in without trying to break anything. So the first port of call, you can probably look it up on a generic internet video of any part of the door card removal, but we need to take off this section here, which splits off separately. Ideally you want to reach in through an area that is inconspicuous so that you don't damage the leather, and pry this away. Once you pull this section off, it will reveal 2 bolts. Also at the bottom of the door, quite often under here, if you have a feel, there may be 2 Torx screws holding the door card on. Once those are removed, the door card will loosen, and we'll show you on the next video where we are. So after prying from the underside and slowly helping this off, you can use a series of metal and plastic pry tools to help you. Obviously using the plastic ones will stop you damaging any of the plastic or leather. Once this is off, inside here you will see there's 2 Phillips head screws. Once you remove those, it will make the door card slightly freer. Okay, so the next problem you're going to have is the screws that are under here. You won't even be able to see them or reach them. So this isn't the correct way to remove the door card when you are doing it with a door that opens, but once you've taken out these 2 screws, the door card is still attached over the top. And what we're going to do is just sneak it out from this corner and pull the door card as best as we can off of the railing here. When we've done that, it allows more play in the door card, and we'll be able to get hopefully underneath it. Now once you've taken off the top of the door card, give yourself some play, what you can do, as long as you get a long strong screwdriver, come from the side of the seat, pry it in, yeah, and then you lift the bar up and put it on top of the seat. Now watch that again, you'll see that gap, how much it's increased. Yeah, what that's done is allowed us to get a visual, which you probably won't without a light, but into the gap, and you'll be able to find your screw, which one will be circa here and one will be further up there. If you want to see exactly where the screws are, if you look down the door gap, you'll see, if it focuses, that white almost triangular object at the bottom is where one screw goes through, and there'll be another one at this end. So it allows us to either get a screwdriver in or a small angled Allen key in to get into here and begin to open the screw. Right, so if I just zoom out and show you into this gap here, you will just see one screw has been revealed, and that's thank you to this bar or screwdriver just lifting the door ever so slightly enough for me to be able to see in and be able to undo that screw. So I'll just come out now so you can see where that is. It's down into that nook. As you can see from my previous videos, which I forgot to mention, I've actually lifted off the seat cushion here. I've got myself a set of these, taken out the I think it's a T25. You've had to do it at a very slight angle to get in and onto the head of the screw, but now I'm going to remove one of the screws, which will allow the door card to move a bit more, and then when we remove the second one over there, we should be able to take the door card off. So there's the first screw out. My apologies, it is a T20, and like I said, once you've started turning it with the ratchet sort of a turn or two, the rest you'll literally, with just the tool, be able to turn it out and screw it out. We've got one more to go over there. The door card is becoming more and more looser. To get to that one, we either need to remove the seat entirely, which is just by pulling these both inwards and removing the seat, or you can opt to flip it back, which is what I like to do. I like to remove as little as possible in these scenarios. Fortunately, the other way round, you'll be able to get a screwdriver in there because this part won't be in your way. T20 is located around here. Now obviously I have nowhere to put load on my screwdriver, so I'm having to lift the door card by hand with the screwdriver. Very difficult to show you exactly what I'm doing. I'm hoping this is going to catch it, but essentially just raising this screwdriver up to lift the door card, getting onto the screw. Having removed the second of my torque screws, now my door card completely moves outwards. It's obviously hitting the front seat now, so I'm going to adjust some seats, move some seats, give myself a bit of space. Now remembering on the other side of the door card, which you may see from this video, are these cables which are attached to the door lock mechanism. It's very difficult for me to show you. It might be worth you looking at other videos, or I can skip forward later in the video when I show you what the inside looks like and how you can unclip the clasp. You may actually find a better view of it if you've never seen it before from the outside. And I don't know if you can pick up that hook there. This hook needs to be unhooked from here, but first the rear black portion has to be pulled into that direction and away from the door card, which will give slack to the cable and allow you to unhook it. There is also a couple of electronic connectors there for speakers and possibly window switches that you'll also need to remove before you can take the door card completely out. But essentially what we're doing right now, disconnecting the motor, undoing the 3 Torx bolts holding it on, pulling the motor forward and taking it off the door, and it will be down there. We will then be removing the outer 10mm nuts all the way around the outside of the door card, which will allow this to move ever so slightly forward, and it won't come any more forward until the glass is detached from the door card. The glass is raised up in the door, where we'll just hold it in place with something, and then we can remove the entire metal framework and be able to get a visual on the stuck lock solenoid motor actuator thingy. So we'll see you in a moment. Okay, there is a quick video of the motor after I've taken the bolts off and pulled it out. There is the gear which runs the window and the motor, and there is the part on the car side. Now we're going to open this little window here, and that little window is going to give us access to, you might see it on this video, that's the wiper, the window mechanism itself. Now you just out of shot there can see a nut. Come on, focus. Let's get you zoomed in. You can just out of shot there see a plastic bushing. Now I'm going to show you this closer later in the video, but what I want you to pay attention to, the bushing comes in 2 parts. There's an outer circle. Bear with me, bear with me. All right, there it is. I'm going to zoom out in a minute, but you see this plastic bushing here? It's a perfect view of it. Basically, essentially what's going to happen to get the glass out is the center portion of this plastic bushing. It's very hard for me to get my screwdriver fingers, tools and everything in there to show you. But the center portion of this plastic bushing needs to be popped out towards the outside of the vehicle, which then allows the outer part to be popped out, because this is applying pressure to the outside, not allowing it to pop out. And once you remove that bushing, unfortunately it falls in the door, you have to rescue it when you take everything off. But that will detach the glass from the mechanism and allow you to raise the glass independent of the mechanism, and then you'll be able to get the mechanism out with the door card, internal door card, whatever you want to call it. So I've just zoomed out there so you can see what I'm talking about. Punching that little center part of that collar out is often quite frightening, because obviously you're working around glass, you're needing to push or strike it. Now if you find that you can't push it through, you may need to use something to help you, and you may need to strike it. Now what I sometimes do, I've got a nicely rounded off screwdriver here that's not likely to chop through the plastic. I place that in the center, and I know that it's going to clear the collar. And then what I'm going to do, it is a hammer through screwdriver, I'm just going to use a rubber mallet to help tease it out, and then we'll watch the video straight after. Now you can see the center portion has been pushed through, which will now allow you to push that outer ring through also, and your window will be independent of the blue part which carries the window, and you'll be able to just pull the window up by hand from here, and you can use some tape to fix it to the top of the door, and that will hold the glass out the way while you can now remove the metal inner door card plate. You'll see the clip has now been completely removed, both portions of it, leaving just a void, and you would see a glass piece there with a circle, but I've pulled the glass up so that the clip stays there and the glass is now fully closed. There is my professional attempt of holding the glass up. Make sure you do something a bit more permanent, because obviously whilst you're vibrating the door, you don't want it to drop down and smash or hurt yourself. Now we have more or less the last portion left. This pit here, very much like the white clip, you will need to poke the insides of these three black sections inwards to the door. I'll see if I can do one-handed now, just to show you. Once you poke the inside in, you've got to rescue those as well. See if I can just get another one. No, one-handed's a bit difficult, but once you poke the inside in, that will look like that, which will allow it to collapse and be pushed back through the door. That needs to be removed before you can take off the remaining outer bolts and remove the door card. We'll show you the next scene shortly. Right, once all your bolts are off from the outer door card, which we've taken off, they're down here. Once they've all taken off, the door card will still seem a little bit stiff. You've got to make sure that you've done the parts that we've discussed earlier. Again, try not to knock these through, because that's what will unwind all of this. If you can keep these attached, earlier in the video I said you may need to post these through, just working from memory now, but if you leave those connected, it may not unwind your motor. It's not a big deal, anyone with half a brain will be able to do that. Now the next stage is to this rod, which runs through here down to your mechanism, is going to kind of get in your way when you're trying to pull the door off. So what you want to essentially do is, if you can, disconnect it from up this end. Now this thing here is also a push through pin holding it in. Try not to push that one through. We really want to avoid losing that one. It's a bit of a pain to get hold of. So what I would advise, if you can, is use pliers or a pick tool to just work it out towards you, as opposed to pushing it back into the door. So again, very difficult to do single-handed, but you can just see it's coming now. I'll be able to get enough purchase onto that shortly to completely remove it, which will take this off and allow this to become a little bit more, give it a little bit more play, so I can pull it through that rubber gaiter. Once the center portion's out, it literally will just fly off of there and give the play that you need for everything to happen. We're going to now disconnect this because it's an unnecessary weight, and we're going to remove this off the door. Now once you've taken those off, you will need to just, because there is a bit of tack behind here, you will need to just kind of pry it off a bit, and then it will just become nice and loose. Now the mechanism actually goes up and under here, so it needs to come down and then forward, because otherwise you won't be able to get it completely out because of this mechanism. So you've got to obviously lower it down just enough to clear the mechanism. Once that's out, the door card will more or less come out, all but that cable there. So what I've done, I've pushed this one through here. The cable's now on the other side. I'm trying to push this one through here. I'll need to pull the door card this way, slide it this way in order to slide it over the shaft. The trouble is the wiring loom is all snaking around here, so they've been pulled off through these connector holes, unplugged from here. I've posted two through, but as you can see, the third one, it's round pegs in square hole situation here, because this has been wired afterwards. Now I'm sure there's a way to take the outer cover off of this harness and probably get it through the hole. Fortunately, if you reach in behind the door here, this plug connector will be attached to the mechanism just there. If you can manage to tease that off, you won't have to mess about with the entire wiring loom, because you can actually put it through the other way. So now the door card is out of the way, the wiring loom is still attached. I've pulled it to its absolute max so I can just clear a bit of space for me to get in. And now we have a poor, but nonetheless a visual to the locking mechanism. Now the trouble is, this white cover is a security cover, and you may need to wince and close your eyes, because I'm not sure if you're going to be able to keep this in place whilst you try and get to the part of the lock that is stuck. Obviously, again, you can try various processes here for seeing if you'll free it by pulling it or working it, but if not, then unfortunately you are going to have to move to the next phase. Okay, so now I've quite crudely had to smash the white cover that you see the remains of up there out the way. It's a security cover. You won't get that off with the door still in place, or you might spend a lifetime doing so. It now gives you a visual of a few things. You'll be able to see that the door handle portion, unfortunately I can't get my fingers down to point at it for you, which pulls the brass coloured clasp upwards. Now what we're trying to see is something has not finished a cycle, and it's usually something has not returned into its position, therefore not allowing the cycle to complete and allow the opening process to happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a hook to play with the brass part of what you can see here, the brass colour, the more golder of the metal parts. See if I can pull that down and up while someone works the handle from the outside, and see if that just helps us to get the cycle finished on the close process, so we can at least try and open it. Right, we finally got the door open. Unfortunately, we could not document how we did it and while we did it, because there's just not enough space in the door. So what I'm going to try and do is help you out here, but we will show you once we take the actuator out. If you can look up into the door, that's the plug for the actuator. To the left hand side, you'll see that brass bit I've just lit up. That brass bit is part of one clasp. When you pull that, nothing happens. That in fact is controlled by the door handle, this part here, which wasn't working on the latch. Behind, bear with me, behind the brass portion, further back, I'm going to light it up now, is a second brass portion, which you can just see at the top of your picture there. Now, unfortunately, I could not get to that through this gap. Unfortunately, what I've had to do is slightly bend and oval this hole here, which gives me access inside. I'm going to try and light it up from the inside so you can see. Now, if you look into that hole, you'll see just there is a brass section again. Hold on, get some better light in there if I can. There we are. You'll see another brass section just, hold on, there. Now basically at the top of that brass section, if I can get you into the picture, is an eyelet, a little loophole. And essentially what you've got to do, try and find the right tool, you need to get yourself a pick, something like this. And the reason I've had to pull this portion of the door out is so that I can get the desirable angle to get this onto that gold loop on that brass section and pull it, whilst at the same time pulling this, and bingo, the door clipped open. I'm going to show you it later on in the video properly, but essentially I had to put a flat screwdriver in, widen this, pull this outwards a little bit so that it gives me a better angle in, and then I went in at this angle. I'm going to do it on this side of the hole like that, turned it into the hole, which is literally pretty much about where that mark is there, but just lower down. And as soon as I got onto the latch, pulled it this way, and at the same time pulled this, and bingo, the door opened. Now there are a number of different ways to get in. If, like in my situation, this actuator failed halfway between locking and closing, so the one process wasn't complete in order for it to allow the next process to begin, so it hadn't finished its locking process in order for it to allow you to open. So unfortunately, being stuck halfway meant that this clasp down here was basically essentially where it fully locked would go all the way round. It was sitting here, so it was neither locked nor open, and we were stuck halfway house, unable to actuate the complete process. There are other processes which I'm going to show you here. After you've got to it, you will need to move this part of the rubber back. Sometimes there's a cap positioned here on certain VWs, and in there is a little Torx T20 that, as you loosen it and loosen it and loosen it and loosen it and loosen it, not completely so it falls out, at the same time, if you pull on this section here, eventually you'll feel the play increase, and then your would-be barrel, we'll call it a barrel blank, will slide out. Once you've done that, on the inside of here, you have what has now been taken off, a little clip that connects you to the inside, of the actuator. Now, on other options of trying to get around this problem, what some people do while this part is still in play is open the handle, sneak a very tight flat blade screwdriver in here, pry out this clip and push it into the car. And then what you can also do is, if you get a small hook, it's got to be quite long. I mean, last time we did, I think we used a coat hanger. Pretty much you need a good sort of 15 centimeters in length with a hook just like this one here. And if you slide it between the gap when this part's in play, between the gap like this, hook it to one side, you can actually then pull the other door opening section. But unfortunately that other door, sorry, opening brass part on the actuator, but unfortunately that option didn't work for us. We had to go in this way, and now we're going to essentially pull out the mechanism, the actuator rather, by unbolting the 2 or 3 bolts that hold it in over here, and swing it out of that gap, and it will need to be replaced. And here she is, the actuator, straight removed from the door, fits in, as you can see. There is that portion, so it would roughly be sitting there. Now what I was talking about is that brass part there. The bit we could see in the first part of the clip earlier was this, which is what that part pulls, but it was this hidden part, what I'm going to now call the eagle's head, and I'm hoping you can see why. You can see where I've scratched it to get my hook in, and where I finally got in on that middle stroke and pulled that back. As soon as I pulled that back and pulled this at the same time, the halfway working lock, which is what it is, it keeps working on a halfway, unlatched and allowed the door to open. So a new one of those are required.